And for anybody who's not familiar with the CBA Executive Committee meetings, they are open to the public. They are publicly noticed. They are all, this is not executive session. Those are different things. So if anybody had questions, I saw a couple chats. Feel free to ask, but they are different things.
Thanks, Will. Are we ready to get going? I mean, how many people do we have on? I'm sorry, I can't see that.
We have 15. Sorry, I just had some chats as we were getting things set up. We have 15, and we're still a minute out, so we don't need to start on time.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 6:30 now, and we have 17 board members. Do you want to give it another minute, or do you
Yeah,
want to?
sure. Let's wait 2 minutes.
Okay.
And how many did we get in terms of a yes vote? And yes, I was coming, so I just want to make sure we have.
This is actually, I mean, this we're factoring in people who aren't co-chairs of committees. This is actually more than we had in our little doodle poll. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I think there are also people who just didn't have a preference. So.
Okay.
Either way, now 20.
Okay. Well, just let me know when you think we should start, and then.
Yeah, I would say we're up to 25, so I think that is a great number to start off of. So if you're ready, we can get going.
Okay. All right. Well, first I want to say thank you, everyone. If you hear background noise, I didn't intend for this meeting to take place in an airport, but due to flight delays, that's where it's taking place. So I wanted to welcome you to the first executive committee meeting of 2024. This meeting is provided for in our bylaws. It's essentially all of the officers of the board, all of the committee chairs, past chairs of the board who are current members of the board. And I thought it was a good idea just to start off the year by having one of these, talk about some things that I've observed that we can probably take note of, and just talk this more about just how we're running the committees today. So, and share a couple of ideas for best practices and things like that going forward. I am still in the process of looking at the various committees and seeing where we might do some consolidation. So that process hasn't finished yet. I know I've reached out to most of you about your public members. If I haven't reached out to you and you have some question about your public members, if you want to add one, or perhaps you want to say goodbye to one, please let Will and I know. We'd like to get on that as soon as possible. Okay, so let's just keep going. And I, again, apologize for any background noise. So the first thing I want to talk about is really committee housekeeping. There are an inordinate number of emails that are going back and forth between the staff people and board members regarding minutes, agendas, and things like that. Just to help the staff get through what they need to get through. It would be really helpful if the chairs of each committee coordinate amongst themselves in terms of the minutes before you actually send them to Will and me. It just would make things go a little bit smoother. Same thing for agendas. It really, going back and forth 5 or 6 or even 7 times on the minutes is, I think, a little bit excessive when you multiply that by the number of committees that we have. And I just noticed that I think it's cutting into their time and doing other things. Look, sometimes it happens. It can't be avoided. With respect to the minutes, a couple of things I want to note, and some of this has to do with some new policies that I'm instituting. But and for some of you who've handed in the minutes, you'll notice that I've asked that we take note of how many members of the public are attending. There's a couple of purposes for that. Number one is, well, we'd like to know how many people are actually coming, and it will be good to track in case if we have to get off of our Zoom meetings, if we need to plan for meeting rooms. We'd like to have a general idea of actually how many people are coming to the meetings. Now that, of course, may change if they're not in Zoom and they're in person. That may mean fewer, but it would be nice to have a good idea of that. In addition to that, and I was thinking about this going forward, when you're doing your minutes, if you change the topics in the minutes, if you can take note of what time it is when you change the topics, I also think that that would be helpful for people who are going to go back and use the minutes as a guide, and then go back and actually maybe not review the entire meeting, but start at a place in the video where that particular topic comes up. It will be very helpful, and I think we're gonna do that as well with full board meetings. The other thing I want to talk about is the timing of getting your minutes in. This is extremely important. And I want to stop right there and say, look, within your own committees, I personally do not think that it's completely necessary that the chairs of the committees are the ones doing the minutes. That may be a little bit difficult. And I don't think it is burdensome for committee chairs to start getting other members of the committee involved in terms of actually doing the minutes. I'm not saying that you have to force everybody who's a member of your committee to do the minutes, but I think, get some buy-in from people, give people an opportunity to do this, to get used to doing it. And I think it may make the handing in of the minutes be a little bit more smooth if that's going to happen. The other thing is, I think you need to, when you're doing your minutes, you might want to take a look at how they don't have to be extremely detailed. Okay. They can be, they can be shorter in terms of, there was a discussion about X topic. some people said this, some people said that. It doesn't have to, your minutes should not, well, not that they should not, they don't have to be 5 pages long. They don't have to be a transcript of the actual meeting. So keep that in mind, and that may make it easier for you to hand them in on time. Because it's really important that we have them with enough time for the full board meeting. And the other thing is, in looking at the bylaws, from now on, when we're adopting the minutes at the full board meeting for the full board, we should also really be adopting and voting on the minutes of the committees as well. So any changes that need to get done, we should do that at the beginning, and this way we have fully adopted minutes for all of our meetings when we go into the next session. So the other thing I want to talk about is, I want to just move to agenda items. And when I go through all this, if you have anything you want to say, and then maybe if we want to take a couple of questions, we can do that. Or don't feel like you have to, ask any questions right now. You can always email, and happy to look at those as well. When it comes to, the one thing I do want to say about the minutes, the open meetings law does require that the minutes are supposed to be in within 2 weeks of the actual meeting date. So also keep that in mind as well. And I know it's really cumbersome, but it's actually easier to do them, within the time that you did the meeting. Don't always rely on wanting to go back and watch the video in detail. Again, your meetings don't have to be a transcript of the meeting. So if you keep that in mind, I would say, if you have minutes that are a page long, it says who's there, what you discussed, what time the meeting began, what time the meeting adjourned. You can go online and look at a couple of different examples of it. Okay, so the agendas. These are really important for a number of reasons. The earlier we're able to post the agendas, we're really promoting what your meeting is all about. So the faster you get your agenda in, the better it is for promotion of your meeting, increase of attendance, and just knowing what's out there. Ideally, it should be a week prior to the first meeting of the month. That hasn't been happening, but it's just a good rule to follow, and it can't always happen, and things will happen. Speakers will cancel. An important agenda item may come up. We keep all these things in mind, but again, we're just trying to look at best practices and try to standardize how we're doing things amongst the committees. And that's really all this is about. So that's really all I want to say about that. I don't know, Will, if you want to chime in, or Kevin or Robert, with respect to anything that I've just said.
No, I think that's a great, recommendation. Is just us trying to get your agendas up online is really about you guys having the best meeting possible, where people know what's coming and what to participate in and how to participate. You do have a couple of hands up from Judy and then Ed.
Okay, Judy.
Hi, Valerie. Since everybody was so kind to me last month and wished me a happy birthday, I want to make sure we wish Lori a happy birthday tonight.
Okay, so, happy birthday, Lori.
My question is, I don't quite understand your comment about adopting the minutes at the full board meeting. What is the purpose of that? Because the minutes tell you what happened at the meeting. What if we get into a discussion about the minutes? I mean,
well, there's two ways.
That's not the right place to have the discussion. If people want to discuss, they should come to the meeting.
Well, we could do it one of two ways, Judy. One thing I am not seeing that the previous month's meetings are being discussed at the following meeting of each committee. I'm happy to adopt that as a procedural matter, but it doesn't appear to me from reading the minutes of any of the meetings that I've seen, that there's actually the minutes of the prior meeting are submitted and they're voted on by the committee. I'm happy to adopt that procedure if everybody thinks that that's the way we should go. But at some point,
sorry, I must have misunderstood you. Did you want the committee to vote on the minutes at the next meeting?
So Judy, maybe I can explain it a little bit differently. Is that if there are like,
Can
you know, and this is actually standard practice that we already do right now, is if like Judy, you notice that you were at the, let's say, housing committee meeting that was held, you know, during the last month, and you look at the minutes during at the beginning of full board and you see your name is not listed, the moment that you're supposed to like raise your hand and object to those minutes is during the full board meeting as we approve all of the minutes that are in your packet. So you would say, you know, before everybody can raise their hands and say motion to approve the minutes, you would raise your hand and say, actually, I have a, you know, a change to the housing committee minutes. I was there and I'm not listed in the attendance. That's not to say that you're going to all just, and it's not to say that anybody has been over the last, you know, decade discussing like, you know, Bob said that it was 12 feet tall, not 11 feet tall. You know, nobody really gets into that granular of thing. It's more to discuss like, I voted in favor of this and the minutes reflect me as voting in opposition to it. Does that make more sense?
I don't think I was ever aware that we approved the minutes, but thank you.
Yeah, it's on the agenda for every full board.
But I thought it was just the minutes of the full board meeting that we were approving.
Yeah, I think that's what Valerie's trying to clarify.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Will.
Oh no, I think there's plenty of members who have raised their hand and said exactly as I explained. Like I was voting yes at this committee, and I'm marked as voting no. And I think everybody sort of glosses over that section of the agenda. And so there's a lot of folks, especially new members, who didn't know that they weren't just voting on the full board minutes or the land use minutes, but they're actually voting on everything that's in the packet.
Thank you.
It's the reason why we include the meeting minutes in those packets for the meetings that didn't actually have resolutions. Judy, you muted yourself.
Okay.
Judy.
Well, first I wanted to thank Judy for asking the question because I think it helps clarify it. So because to your point, what we really should be saying at the beginning is that we're adopting all the minutes for the prior month at the meeting, at the full board meeting. And so that's when the sort of the technical clarifications should occur. And they usually do. But we just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that that's what we were doing. Okay. Next question. I think you said Ed had a question.
Yeah, we have Ed and then Rebecca and then Craig.
Okay.
Just to, you have to catch that flight, Valerie?
No. I'm just on the arrival end.
Sorry. Not to get too technical and legalistic about it, but best practices incorporated, as you know, in other places, in the House and the Senate, if you are not in attendance at the meeting, you know, not to, you know, get too ticky-tacky, you're really not allowed to vote on the minutes because you're not there. So ergo, you wouldn't be able to, as Judy opined, Will opined, you wouldn't be able to speak to what the minutes were because you weren't there. So if you weren't, say, at full board, I wasn't at full board last week. I was at an induction, so I couldn't make it. So if it comes up next month, I will refrain from voting for full board in terms of approval because I was at another event and could not make the full board meeting. But technically, if you're not at the meeting, you know, technical best practices, corporate and otherwise, you should not be voting to approve the minutes. Now, as to the issue Will raised as to attendance, you certainly would hope with respect to attendees being present or not present, that with the submission of the minutes ahead of time, that those who were there would review that and raise that issue before we got to full board, so that something such as really isn't raised, because frankly, that's not really the issue with respect to background noise. Someone's got a, so there's really, you know, attendance, it really isn't a matter of approving minutes. It's the substance of the meeting itself. That's all I would say. And again, not to get too ticky-tacky and too legalistic about it, but that's just my 2 cents.
And Ed, you're right. We don't do a roll call vote for them either. So we don't actually ask for, we don't actually record the vote.
We should, if we're going to be doing it that way and being really technical and hyper technical about it, then I would suggest that we do that in terms of best practices going forward and set the bar for other community boards, because God knows across 59 of them, it's all loosey goosey. All due respect to people who may have otherwise been on other community boards. I've seen clients I see across the boroughs that it's, you know, catch as catch can as to how people are doing this. Anyway.
Thanks, Ed. Again, that's why we're having these meetings to figure out what the best practice is and how to go. I think you said there was one more comment.
It was Rebecca and then Craig later.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You can mute me.
My idea would be to have the individual committees vote to approve the minutes at the start of each meeting. I think there's a lot of them. They're quite detailed. You know, if the minutes are handed in early enough that people have time to review all of them, including full board, that's great, but there's a lot. And I think to Ed's point, I've noticed things in random minutes and I've emailed Will, you know, ahead of the meeting. And except if we don't have minutes early enough, you know, it's harder for people to be able to do that. So I would think it would be better to approve committee meetings in the committees. I think that if you want them to be approved by the full board, maybe they could be included in the next month's packet, but I just think the committees are the people who are at the committee members and other board members who are at the meeting are the ones who are gonna know if the minutes are accurate.
And since you're in, oh yeah, go ahead.
And then I have one other question, which was when you say how many members of the public, you just mean numbers wise. You don't mean by name, right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking about transportation when we have so many people.
No. We're just trying to get numbers of people. That's all we're trying to get.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Craig. Thank you, Rebecca.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Valerie. Just want to, as someone who is probably very guilty of having overly lengthy and extensive minutes, I do perhaps want to take advantage of the fact that you're encouraging us to make them more concise. I just want to urge everyone to not make them too concise. I think as a member who obviously does not have the ability to go to every committee meeting like no one else, I'm sure no one else does either, I want to just make sure we all have enough substance in the minutes to be able to have a sense of what the discussion was about, and if there are details in which we may have to go back later and see if, say, a city agency is honoring whatever request they made, or if an applicant is going to at some point coming back to us and we need to go back to a prior set of minutes, or just to understand why the vote was the way that it was. If we have a vote that was not unanimous or was contested, I just want to put a plug in for just making sure there's enough there for people to work with, because as a member who's reading minutes, I like to just be able to have that information so I have a sense of why I should vote or the way that I should. And I'm educated enough to do so. And it's less of an issue now that we had the meetings recorded before the pandemic, and we were just relying on whatever happened in person. That was much more difficult, but I still just thought I would mention that. So that's it.
Oh,
Thank you.
Completely agree. Well, first of all, I want to say, Craig, you know, I've said this to you in private. Craig's minutes are amazing. And you feel like you're at the meetings. He's able to do that and also get them in a fairly timely manner. So I'm just trying to sort of find the balance. And again, I apologize for all of the background noise here. I'm just trying to find the balance between getting the minutes in on time and getting the detail we need. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking when you switch topics to try to note that in the minutes. So this way, if you did want to go back to the video, I think, Craig, you're absolutely right. If there are action items and follow-up items, we certainly want to include those in the minutes. but I think, look, if everyone could do minutes like yours and get them in, a day and a half or 2 days after the meeting, that would be fantastic. So,
And I'm not saying everyone should. And I can't do that myself.
so anyway, but the other thing I just want to say too is, in order, also to make sure that your minutes are really comprehensive, we have multiple chairs on most committees. It should be a collaborative process, and that should really be done before you actually submit them to me and the staff team. And this way, I think we'll get to the end a lot sooner. And again, we'll also have a better record and also encourage in this way the public looking back on what happened last month will also know what's happening next month, et cetera, et cetera. So I think again, we're just working towards best practices here. Thank you. Will, anything else on this topic?
Yeah, we have 3 more hands up.
Okay.
Elizabeth Rose, and then
Sure.
Sahar, and then Rebecca again.
Okay.
And
Hi,
Valerie,
everybody.
I'm gonna wait. Sorry, really quickly,
Mhm.
Elizabeth. Valerie, I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna mute you, but then I'm gonna send you an option to unmute, and you can just claim it at any time that you need to.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, all joining you from my parents' house in sunny Florida. I love the idea of including some reference to the number of members of the public who attended. That obviously fluctuates or may fluctuate over the course of the meeting. It would be extremely helpful if perhaps whoever of the board staff could provide, here's the total number of members of the public who logged in. Or,
so
you guys have the count, we really don't.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and 2 things to point out about that, because those are great points. One, that the staff are now going to send you guys as committee co-chairs the next morning your approximate count, and then in the minutes it should say and we've been keeping it consistent. So if you look back at last month, but it'll basically say approximate members of the public attending, and then
Perfect.
And so basically we'll round it to the nearest 5, essentially, I think. And because there's a lot of people who sign up, but they never sign in, or people who sign in as an alias or whatever, that you never know if it's actually their just initials are actually, if it's ER, is it Elizabeth Rose or is it, who else, so we don't ever know. But we'll send you guys as each of the co-chairs, as we're sort of getting your minutes ball rolling, will be the next morning usually, or maybe the day after that, where we send you an approximate number of attendees. So
thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great question. Valerie, did you have anything to add to that, or we can move on to Sahar? Sahar, go ahead.
It's so funny. This is exactly what I was going to ask. So you answered me well, and thanks for asking, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, great questions. Yeah. And then Rebecca, you're up.
This just one small thing. Craig made me think of it. I think adding a little bit of detail to, minutes that are just getting applications like street light. Let's say, a cannabis shop is not unanimous. Since I guess, we have some board members who vote no, in principle, it would be nice to have a bullet, controversial because next to a school / church, or applicant didn't show up. Because I think we also spend a lot of time in meetings trying to figure out what non-unanimous items are.
And that's the last. Oh, Valerie, if you want to jump in, police actually just raised your hand too.
Hi, these are all great suggestions.
Oh, sorry, police. Sorry. Please unmute. There you go.
Hi, I just wanted to add one other suggestion. We keep a running tally of the topics covered at each meeting on one sheet, just because if you want to go back and refer to, the city presented on XYZ issue, it's easier to look at, one running tally. So just wanted to make that suggestion for others.
Valerie, you're up.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, not one size is going to fit all, but I think, all of this will help gather data and, just help people get to the right place in terms of getting things in on a timely basis. Because again, I think if we're trying to maximize participation by the public, all of these things will help. And I think it will also help organize things in terms of what are you thinking about doing, coordinating topics for the future. And that sort of segues into the next topic. Getting the agendas in early and letting Will and the team know about who you want to invite. The earlier the better. This way we can make sure that the guests can show up. I mean, obviously there's always something that can happen. We've had that happen a lot, but and then once we know that, then we can promote the meetings even better than we usually do. And about the coordination of the speakers, I think it's really important that Will and the team be aware of all contacts, and for the most part, let Will make the contacts, or let somebody from the board office make the contact. They're in the office all day, and they can do the back and forth. So I want to take myself and put myself on mute. Will, you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I think there's not a whole lot more to say about it, but if you are working with an agency or working with a speaker to come to your future meeting, it's just super helpful that you include your committee liaison on those correspondence. I grew up in the grew up in the over CC and overshare sort of zeitgeist. So it is never a hardship for us to archive an email that you are having a back and forth with a speaker, but it is a hardship to have to track down somebody to give them the link to the meeting, a link to whatever. So if you're having emails with folks, or after you've had a phone call with a speaker who you want to come, make sure that you just put us in connection so that we can send them the meeting information and get their correct titles and all that sort of stuff. It just helps us in the long run of just saving some follow-up and backup questions and things like that. Barbara Rutter, you have your hand up. Go ahead. And then Valerie, I'm going to mute you for a second.
Okay, so I heard sort of two different things, and Will, I've often had discussion and not know. Sometimes I would like to call somebody and I want to do it myself to ask it. Other times, of course, I rely on you so much. But and I would always, if I'm doing it on my own, I would always include yous, whoever it is, you, Kevin, whoever.
Yeah.
But do you mind if we do? Sometimes if we have a contact and we want to ask, is it the wrong protocol to go off? I always feel I'm saving you time when I do that.
Love it, but it's just more the awareness thing. So if you do it, give us heads up that you're planning to, or give us heads up after you had that conversation.
I totally, if I don't make you aware it's a mistake on my part, I totally agree that keeping everybody in the loop.
Yeah, that's exactly
thanks.
Right. Valerie, there's nobody else with hands up, so.
Thanks. Well, I just want to say about that, part of the coordination is not everybody on every committee knowing what the other committees are doing. So, if you go out on your own and copying Will or your team, or as somebody else on the team who's your liaison, hopefully will cut down on duplication of speakers that are coming to different meetings and coordination as far as that goes on. Look, I don't want to keep everybody. The next topic I just wanted to touch on was speaking to the press. We should not be talking to the press or sharing things with the press that aren't in the public. And Will, I want you to really address this topic because it's come up a couple of times and put you in the middle of some things. You can put me on mute.
Okay, yeah, and just I'll send you the thing. You chime in if you have anything else to add. So basically what Valerie is saying there is in our bylaws, it states that the chair and the district manager are the only people who should, on any regular basis, be in communication with the press. If a reporter calls you, you should say, I need to chat with our chair before I can respond to anything, and you need to flag it for Valerie or whatever. Should the press cover any of your meetings or whatever, that is okay. But what we sort of encountered in very recent history was that documents that we had not actually made fully public, we hadn't published them on our website, sometimes these are applications that have sensitive materials about people's social security numbers and phone numbers and addresses and everything like that, that we in government have to redact before we can publish to the broader world. So there's a couple of instances recently where applications were shared with members of the press. They could have been shared by people outside of CB8, but they also could have been shared with members. And so we wanted to flag that our bylaws and our rules state that you as board members should not be going out and speaking to the press or sharing materials with the press without consent from the board office or the chair. In advance before you do it. You have a hand up from Barbara Rutter, and yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
This is my pet peeve. I've heard a couple of times, and by accident, I happened to be Googling something and came to somebody's on a radio show. It happened to have been a meeting I went to. So people say things like, I am a community board person, I'm chair of the XYZ committee, and then they say, the community feels this way. Is that legally true? Is that legally okay? It's certainly misleading. And I find it, quite truthfully, difficult when somebody says the community feels that way, which means your 22 friends that you spoke to. But it sounds like anybody who, was just listening, that meant it came from the community board, which is quite different. And I feel this is a serious thing. And I'm always bothered by it.
I just want to say that if you are interviewed on television or whatever, you're always speaking in your individual capacity, never representing the board, unless you are representing the board, which would be, as Will just mentioned, if someone comes to you and asks, if you want to speak as the chair of health, seniors, etc., and can you go on the radio? That's fine, or speak that way. But most people usually say, I'm here. I'm speaking in my individual. You may say I'm on the community board or whatever, but I'm speaking in my individual capacity, or speaking in whatever capacity you want. You're entitled to have your own opinion on issues. It's just a question of how, when you're making your statement, in which capacity you're making it in. The only thing I don't want to overblow this. I just just certain things happen with Koyo, with it, that papers seem to make it into the public domain before they were actually public, and so that's all we're trying to get at. I can't even think of a specific. I can't even think of.
I don't know. Am I muted?
Yeah,
it's representing the community, the community board, and there has to be a clear. What you said, that I'm talking as an individual person, I have a right to do it. But when you say I'm on the community board and the community says something, it's true.
Right.
You're saying the community board said it, but it certainly is.
That's right. I mean, you shouldn't really be saying that. I mean, we don't. That's correct. I mean, if that happens, you should let us know. But I think that I think we're just really doing this sort of today as best practices. I can't say that I need to speak to anybody on this issue, but we just thought, since we were getting everyone together, this would be just just a reminder again about best practices and what we can do when we're out there. Okay. Any other questions, Will, or can we just?
Yeah, you have one from Sharon Pope Marshall. Go
okay,
ahead,
just mute me.
Okay.
Hi. I just wanted to circle back with regards to the documents. I thought that was so interesting. It's possible for the board to review documents that are not public?
So all documents that are submitted to the board are considered fair game for a Freedom of Information Act. So all of that information is public, pending review from, and this is how all FOIL requests work, is that they are reviewed by the city's lawyers to redact sensitive information. We don't, by process, through every application that we receive through, like Street Life is a great example. There's a lot of documentation that we ask for that some of it does have sensitive information about people's phone numbers, people's email addresses, people's locations, where they live, that you certainly don't want to go forth and make widely public in a way that, like, there are people who dox people, there are people who swat people. Like, we
Right.
don't want to be in a situation where we're sharing people's private information in a unsecure manner. And
Okay.
so
I
there's a city
appreciate the
privacy law.
clarification.
Yeah, there's a city privacy law that basically says we all have these documents. We know how to make them public, and some of them require a lawyer looking at them, taking a black marker to people's social security numbers, because you definitely don't. There's no need, there's no public benefit to sharing somebody's social security number.
Of course. And I appreciate the example. That was a good example. I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah, and then Peggy Price, you have your hand up as well.
Thanks very much. I just want to clarify a point that we were talking about a minute ago. I'm assuming that when co-chairs invite members of the press to a particular session that they think that this journalist would like to cover, I'm assuming that we can go ahead and do that, but just CC the member of the board that we're working with as liaison. I'm just clarifying that that's acceptable.
I saw Valerie shake her head. She can unmute if she wants to clarify that further. And shaking her head in the affirmative.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. What we're talking about just having like a reach out interview of some kind. Not, I mean, the press is entitled to come to all of our events. We actually, I think, want to promote them. They're public meetings, they're open meetings, so the press can come whether you invite them or not. But it's always nice to get some good coverage on good topics to show people that the community board is involved in issues that are important to everyone. So yes, Peggy, the answer is that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay,
Yeah,
last topic. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was
Bill.
gonna say I don't see other hands up, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just the last topic, as I said, we're just continue to work on committee reorganizations. And we want to put this executive committee on. I'm sorry for this background, it's driving me crazy. I'm sure it's really driving everyone crazy. We'd like to set up a regular time for these. I'm not saying we're going to use all of them, but we would like to sort of have it be the fourth Wednesday of the month after the regular full board meeting, but before the next month's meeting. So maybe we can talk about coordinating agendas, what's coming up. And Will and I were thinking fourth Wednesday of the month at 5 or 5:30. And we're just wondering if that works for everyone. And quite frankly, not every chair from every committee would have to come. Just make sure you have a representative that can come. So this way we can coordinate things. Again, I don't see this as having to be every month, but at least at the beginning of the year, just sort of getting a full stride. For instance, at our next executive committee meeting, we wanted to sort of talk about the city district needs statement and how each committee should be formulating ideas for that. Will, if you want to expound on that and put me on mute again, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll expand on that as we go closer to the close of the evening. I see Rebecca and Jane Parshall have their hands up, so
Okay.
I'm going to mute you and let
Now,
them
in
talk.
terms of a regular meeting, it would be easier for people who have to commute back from work, I think, to have meetings not start at the very least before 6:30. I was thinking a good date would be, if we're not having a land use meeting, that's when I think the executive committee meeting should be, because theoretically we booked all of those out in our calendar already. And then I think if there is a land use meeting and we have to meet, we can do the fourth Wednesday. That's just my preference, because I was texting Will. I was, I knew I would be here. I just didn't know if I would be on the street or in the subway when the meeting started.
Yeah, I think, Valerie, you can chime in if you want to, but I think this is just an idea to throw it out there so that we could eventually get to a more standing date. So I think what we should do is probably have some input from you guys on what you think would be ideal. The problem that we butt into is, like, if there was some reason to have an executive committee meeting and we're trying to not get in the way of the busy committee calendar. Many months we are booked almost completely solid every day, Monday through Thursday, each day of the week, each week of the month. So we're looking to not make it where there'd be a conflict of, oh, sorry, you can't have a committee meeting because we have an executive committee meeting at that time. So I'm not sure. We don't know the right answer. I don't have the right answer there. And then, did you have
I
anything
mean,
else?
I would rather have it a date and time that we could just have it set in stone, whether we use it or not. That's more likely than not, we're not going to use it. And again, as I know you're the first vice chair, Rebecca, but if, in terms of your other committees, as long as somebody else can show up, that's fine. You know, this is not going to be like a mandatory attendance kind of thing. I know that there are so many committee meetings that, you know, the idea of having just another meeting for the sake of having a meeting, that is something I definitely do not want to do. So, want to go to Jane and please mute me?
Yeah, and that's why I think the land use date is also a great thing.
No, I don't want to
have
do
in
that.
the-
I don't want to do that because land use is land use. That's a mandatory meeting. And if we're not going to use it, we're just not going to use it because, you know, many community boards have a standing executive committee meeting every month. I don't want to create another meeting, but I don't want to have a substitute where if it turns out we don't need it, we're only going to use, I'd rather have a date that we may use. Again, not everybody has to come to this, but everybody has to come to land use. So, anyway, Jane?
Oh, thank you, Valerie. I just wanted to add my 2 cents. When I look at the community board monthly calendar, it's just staggering how many meetings there are. And as long as attendance isn't compulsory, we all lead such busy lives and have other things, I hope, going on besides the community board. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there to you.
Thanks, Jane. I don't see any other hands up. So Valerie, if you want to, oh, I said I would come back to Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you, Will. This is just a scheduling heads up because for the East 94th Street rezoning, I just learned that the city council hearing will be on February 13th. And we should make sure we have both official and potentially additional individual capacity community board input at that hearing, emphasizing obviously both our support for construction of affordable housing, but also the conditions that we put on our conditional approval.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And you're right that probably if we have these meetings, we also should have like a updates section at the end of the meeting too. Sorry, Peggy Price.
Hi, thank you. Valerie and all, I just want to bring up a point that we could either discuss now or at the next executive committee meeting. But as Jane was pointing out, the calendar is pretty chock full every month. And some of our committees are having trouble finding meeting dates. I wonder if we could do something about that situation so that some of our committees could get an opportunity to meet, even if we don't have a scheduled, a locked in date every month. Is there something we could do about that, Valerie, or Will, or somebody?
Yeah, Valerie, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, we are looking at what these, to Jane's and Peggy's point, there are so many meetings and even potential meetings. The calendar is overloaded and I think detracts from our also having, you know, I don't think anybody wants to have meetings for the sake of meetings. And I don't want people to have meetings where they really don't have anything to say because they're afraid of losing their dates. So we're going to try to come up with something that maybe particular committees don't meet every month, but they have a rotating schedule on that date. I don't want to say which committee it is, but let's just assume it's the third Tuesday of the month. And that means if it's, you know, 1 month, it's this committee and the next month it's the other committee. And this way there is a set schedule, but it doesn't necessarily have to be every single month. And this way you'll know if you're going to plan a meeting that, you know, that would be your regular date. Now, if something happens and we're not using a land use meeting in the month, then that date would be available. But we're going to try to come up with some plan to, I don't want to say streamline the meetings, because we want to have meetings that are appropriate. We don't want to stream and cut out meetings that we think are meaningful and that should be occurring. But, you know, we do have quite a few committees that need to meet every month. And so happy to have input offline about how you think that should work, because obviously I don't think that's really, it needs to be made by one person. I think we need to work together and figure that out. You can put me on mute.
Yeah. Was that everything or?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And if you have comments on that, you know, I think both Valerie and I think it's a really great idea that should hopefully open up a little bit of more regularity where people will have some predictability of like, okay, it won't be this month, but I know that in February I'll have the blank date, you know, so something to consider. Michelle.
Thank you. I'm not sure that this is the exact thing to bring up now, but I couldn't think of another place. And when Valerie mentioned the yes with conditions and the no with conditions, excuse me, I thought that opened up an opportunity for me to make this comment and see what you all think about it. From a person who's very, very knowledgeable about how city planning works and how other government agencies work, and a person who commented on how we do our resolutions, the comment was made to me that when you do a resolution that is yes with conditions or no with conditions, that when it gets to the appointed city agency and they're sort of putting those resolutions in what they consider their appropriate pile, yes with conditions will go down as a yes, and no with conditions would go down with a no. I raise this because we've had, you know, we've had resolutions where we said no, and then we said, oh, but let's make it positive and do it yes. So I wanted to throw that out there with an eye towards being mindful, because we're only counting on everybody reading exactly what we say. And reading all those conditions and all the comments. So just to be mindful that the comment will go in the pile that you don't necessarily mean it to go in. So I'm not looking for a specific answer, but just for you to think about it and, you know, or anybody want to comment on it. But going forward, we might want to give that some thought.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Rebecca.
Okay.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Valerie.
No, I mean, you know, we could talk about that offline. I just, in the context of just City of Yes, that was one of the things that they actually asked for, was to hear what if we did have conditions, what they were. So I know you're not speaking specifically to that, Michelle, but I'd be interested in hearing more about that offline. Go ahead, Rebecca. Put me on mute, please.
Yeah, I was just going to, instead of going on and on, technically we are given 4 options and how to, you know, respond to applications. And that is yes, no, yes with conditions, no with conditions. So if they're putting it in different piles, maybe that's something we want to send a letter about or something, but those are the options that were given. And I think that's important to note.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other comments before we were going to give a little bit of a Chuck, go ahead. Chuck, you
I just have a quick question, quick comment, because Michelle said something which I don't necessarily agree with. No with conditions is no, and they're not going to look at your conditions. Yes with conditions, they will look at those conditions. They're not going to disregard those conditions. That's been the history of it. And we can talk about it more, but I don't want to get in a long discussion.
Appreciate that, Chuck. I'm just going to say one thing, and then Will, you can end it by talking about the district needs statement. I just wanted to, I know that this afternoon you received an email from Will talking about the crafts fair next weekend. We could really use volunteers for that. And so if you're interested, let us know. We've got, thanks to the great work of the arts committee, we've got about 100 crafters coming. So we need as much help as we can get. So I just want to plug that. Now, Will, you can put me on mute again.
Okay, thanks. Yes, Chuck, Yes, Valerie. Okay. Valerie mentioned that next month we're going to try to focus on the district needs statement and budget priorities. And so this is something where I think our budget chairs have done a really great job of trying to start to get more voices into the room about what it is we are asking for from each of these, because it's not just like we're asking for one thing from one agency. We're asking for, stuff from every agency essentially. So each one of your committees has input in this, and also so should the public. So what we were discussing is that there are ways that other community boards do this, where each of the committees is sort of responsible for their section of the district needs and budget priorities. And so, trying to get on everybody's radar that, it happens in sort of weird times of the year, because we're starting to discuss the next fiscal year while the city council is voting on the current fiscal year, or the next coming up fiscal year. And it's just, it is a bit of a strange process. So we'll talk through a little bit of the district needs statement, but and how each committee can sort of take a time during the spring or the late spring to start looking forward to the district needs statement and working on honing this charter mandated document to be more impactful and powerful and representative of what your communities are working on and voting on, and the resolutions that you guys have been approving over the course of a year, to add those in to bolster the things that we're asking for and we're discussing in that very important document. So look forward to that. Look forward to discussion on that. And Valerie, if you would like to say anything, or maybe people would like to motion.
I just make a motion to adjourn. I just want to thank everyone for coming on. We were only on about an hour, which was my intent. And again, I apologize for doing this meeting from the arrivals at the Las Vegas International Airport. No one's won a jackpot while I've been here. But anyway, thank you so much. And I really do appreciate it. Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Thank you. See you soon. Hopefully at the crafts fair. Bye-bye.